Hi guys. Guess what season it is? It's TXV season. Spring of the year, they turn on the AC, it cools for a little while and then it stops. You see, you got this high subcool, and the superheat's not bad right now, but let it run a little while and it will be. If you look at the pressures, the coil's probably running about 26 degrees right now, 27. So let's go downstairs, and it's a furnace, straight AC, one of the good reams here. We'll go downstairs and see what kind of TXV it's got, and if we got anything we can work on it with. Another way to confirm that you got a TXV and that it's an issue is lock off your condenser fan. You can see that subcool's up to 36 degrees right now, and we're still only up to 99 degrees on our 99 PSI on our suction. So the longer this thing runs, the more it shuts down. Take the cover off, and so of course the subcool tells us we've got plenty of liquid up against the TXV. It should be feeding more than that through to let that suction pressure go up. So we're just going to pump this thing down into itself. I'll take off the caps here. I'm going to close up the discharge, the liquid line here, and let it suck everything back up and pump it into the condenser. Get this one started. Now, this thing does have a low pressure switch, so we may end up having to hold the contactor on in. Oh, too late. Damn. Let's see if we can get her back on. Equalize it. Probably going to need to pump it down through the gauges anyway, because the suction was coming down a lot quicker than the liquid side, because that TXV is restricted. We've got it equalized, this line's shut. You don't want to pull a scroll down into a vacuum if you can help it. So we're going to have about 7 PSI there. 8. That's a long way off. Okay, let's go back downstairs. Well, here's what we got down here in the basement. There was no power switch, so I just took the door off to make it quit so we can hear and see about getting this front off. What in the world? I wonder if there's screws behind this. Of course there is. Well, let me see about getting this door off and we'll go from there. Okay, so we've gained access to these 2 top screws by cutting the plenum, I guess. It's ductboard, I don't know. And got up under it where we can get to it. Landlords always be like, wonder why I can't get that guy that put this in to come back and work on it. It's because he knows how it's put in. Well, good news and bad news. Bad news is ream braces are TXVs in, so it's not an easy bolt-on thing. And never use that little brass strap they give you with that stainless steel screw, because, you know, I'm sure zip ties would be a lot cheaper for them to put in the bag. But they don't, they're very tight. What I'm going to do is, I've got a 45 power head on the truck. I'm going to try just to replace this power head and get them back up and running. Typically, this little bulb right here and the power head is what, you know, actually loses its charge and keeps it from opening up so much. Not always, but, you know, most of the time, I've had luck just changing these out.
60% of the time, it works every time.
So I'm going to wrestle that thing out a little bit here and see if I can break it loose. I'll make sure I got one on the truck first, because, you know, we got about 8 PSI in those lines. If we could get this thing back together quick, we might still have some pressure left in there. Okay, so I got a new power head. What I'm gonna try to do is straighten this capillary tube kind of straight out, so when I break this loose and start unscrewing it, it don't get wound up in anything. And I'm gonna do the same thing to this one before I start. And like I say, I may not get it back on there in time, and I'll just have to pull a vacuum, but it ain't no big deal. It's worth a try. Okay, I just cracked it loose with the wrenches, and if you've wondered if you can take one of these off with gas in it, the answer is no. Hear it? It will leak. Of course, I've got this thing pumped down to nothing, so if you tried to take one of those off with the full charge, you'd have to evacuate. Okay, I got this new one just snuck down hand tight, and it took me a lot longer than it should because I didn't have anybody here to help hold this guy out of my way, and I didn't want to cross thread it. But let's see if we still got any gas in it. Can you hear that? There's still some pressure in it. We'll look on the gauge when we get back out there. Okay, she's tightened back up, and you can't use just a normal wrench on these things. It's too wide, a normal adjustable wrench. Sporlan used to make a wrench for the old R22 TXVs that was just a flat piece of metal, kind of chrome colored, that was nice and thin and fit right on it. But when they came out with the 410A valves, they made the nut bigger, and the wrench don't fit. And as far as I know, at least back in the day, they didn't have a wrench. So I wound up buying this little skinny adjustable, which you can fit up in there and get it onto the actual head focus. So that's a handy thing to have in your tool bag. Get my gauges turned herself off. And we still have, well, right at 3 PSI. So I would feel just fine letting this gas loose and starting this system up, and know that no air was introduced into the system because that refrigerant was in there wanting to come out. And as long as it's wanting to come out at even 3 PSI, you know, above the atmospheric pressure, nothing's going to go in it. But that wouldn't make a very long video, and since this is YouTube, I'd get eat up in the comments. So let's put some nitrogen on this thing and make sure I don't have any leaks on that head where I tightened it up. Okay, we got our nitrogen bottle, and it still has some in it. Got it hooked up here. I'm going to add a little nitrogen to it, and we'll go down and do a bubble check on that power head. There's a video that Ralph Wolf did on TNN Services a while back. It's been a good while now, but he replaced a piston that was clogged or wrong size or something. I can't remember all the details, but he did it the same way. Of course, the piston's even quicker than trying to change the head on that TXV, because you can break it loose, pop a new piston in, tighten it back up real quick. And people gave him a hard time, and I think even the great Jim Bergman weighed in on it, you know, talking about the fact that you're going to be gassing off out of this system. Nothing's going to go in it. So it was an okay repair to do it that way. I'm going to go downstairs and take this bubble indicator and make sure we don't have a leak around that thread where I tightened that head on. And if it's good, we will start pulling a vacuum. I don't see it blowing any bubbles, and I don't hear anything down here. So we'll let it sit there a minute and make sure, and then we'll get the vacuum pump. I'll go ahead and start getting it out of the truck. I'll clean up this copper and get a proper strap and put back on that bulb. But we can do that while we're pulling a vacuum. These older homes never have an outdoor outlet so you can plug your cord in. So we'll just tap off the disconnect over here. Okay, ordinarily I would go ahead and take off the other side of the contactor and put a wire nut on it just to make sure nothing was energized in here, but this pretty simple system being straight AC, there's nothing on this side except that line, and the contactor is open, so nothing's going through, so it should be fine. Don't try this at home. Okay, the pressure test held. I took the hoses off. There's valve cores in here, so the nitrogen's still in the system. So I'm gonna take my valve core remover and take out the valve core here so we can pull a vacuum. Not sure who's in charge of valve design down at Ream, but it's kind of poor. You can't get this on there straight because it hits back here. I tried pushing down on this in case it just got bent at the factory when they was putting everything together, but it feels pretty sturdy, and I don't want to damage this valve, so I may have to move over to plan B. The plan B wasn't much better, but at least this little 3/8 line would bend down some. And we have our valve core out, and we should be able to let the nitrogen charge off. They will turn this off before it's completely empty. So again, we won't have no outside contaminants trying to get into the system. It'll all be just coming out of the system. Okay, so we're hooked up to our vacuum pump. We do have power because the little red light's on the bypass. Here's a little bit of nitrogen that's left in there. And now we wait. Go ahead and put a cap on this line. Tighten her up a little bit. In a few minutes we'll stick a gauge on our valve core remover here and see how we're doing. Okay, so we got our line polished up. Got our cap tube routed around here and tied together so it won't rub anything. Got this little cover back on. Had to do that in order to figure out where that thing went. So I'm going to put this front door back on. Okay, we got the door on downstairs. I had to come up to get some mastic tape to try to stop that air leak at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and put this gauge on and see how we're doing. Well, the vacuum pump changed noise when I screwed it down on there, so I imagine we're doing pretty good. And let's see if it's holding though. You know, a lot of times it'll start climbing pretty fast when you've got refrigerant in the system. So we've got a ways to go, but it's pulling down there, and it's just a matter of getting that old refrigerant out. That's the other plus to not even messing with this part of it. Just change your piston, change your power head. If you still got gas in the system, take off, because otherwise you're basically just polluting.
Entire ecosystems are collapsing.
Okay, I got this top duct sealed with mastic tape. I was careful not to cover up my model number. Ream puts them right at the top, and many times I've gone out and you end up trying to peel the tape off and hoping it don't mess up the letters to where you can't read them. Got to bring down some foam tape to insulate that TXV bulb. But it always can be worse. We could have been called out to a no heat and walked up on this thing down here. I guess that's what used to be sitting right over here. Wonder why they didn't carry it out. Man. They don't build them like that anymore. Got me some foam tape. I'm gonna walk around here and check on the vacuum for a minute. She's coming on down. Okay, we got our bulb taped up good, insulated. You know, probably need to put a tie right there. That's kind of floppy. I bet I got one in my bucket. Let me see. Oh, that's much better. Now just the whole thing can shake together. I found this wrench. Apparently it's a 1-inch. And apparently these new ones are 1-inch plus. It's probably at least 1.25 inches, huh? So, I don't know why. We'll brush this guy off a little bit while we wait. I don't see a water hose around, or I'd rinse it off, but I mean, she's not too bad, but it gets pretty dirty on these reams inside this compartment here. I guess all the heat and, you know, every time you put gauges on it, you squirt a little oil out and it gets on the coil probably, but that's not too bad. I mean, it needs all the help it can get. How close to the house can you get with these things? I guess he didn't want to get it out in the mulch. Would have been nothing wrong with sliding this thing out another foot, except you'd have probably needed a little extra copper. You can tell this Rubitex wasn't even changed because this is not 2014 Rubitex. Okay, I got the valves opened back up. Contactor pulled in because I've got it on inside. I turned it back on while I was still down in the basement just to check for any air leaks around the ductwork and taping that I did. So now we've got to get this valve core back in down here. So I'll just pull this guy loose. Looks like it's still tight down here. I don't know. I wish they'd have, if they'd have gave you, another 1/8 of an inch between this and the pipe. I mean, it's tight, fellas. And of course, then it's got that swedge on it, and then it looks like everything's bent a little bit. So it's just a bad deal all the way around to try to get a valve core tool on. I always like pulling the vacuum on the big line because I feel like you can do a quicker job. I don't know if that's true or not, but I like to think it is. So we'll get this guy back on here. I'll get the gauges screwed on her, and we will hook our wires back up. Of course, I have the disconnect out. Otherwise, we'd be putting half power on it. And what I always do on these things, because you just never know what's going on. You might have broken that thing, or you may not have got it in there good or something. I always, before I just go screwing off the tool, I turn it off, take out the stem, and then open it up just to make sure we ain't gonna blow all of our charge out into our face. So we can take this thing off now. Okay, I'll get the wiring hooked back up, get some gauges on it, and we will start it up and see if we fixed it. Alrighty, fellas, the wires are hooked back up. The gauges are on. And let's see if we did any good. She may be overcharged. These things usually don't go bad all at once. Typically what happens, they get a little weak and someone will come out and put in a little refrigerant. It'll raise the suction pressure up and they'll leave it. And next year they might do the same thing. So we'll just see. We were running less than 100 PSI earlier this morning after it had ran for a while, and we're already doing better than that. So that subcool's still a little high. That's where I think it might have a little too much refrigerant in it, but we'll let her sit here and get comfortable. And once we're sure that it's a fix, we'll start adjusting that subcool and taking out some refrigerant. So I'll get back to you in a few minutes. Bad news, guys. We made it worse. It actually froze up here and cut off on low pressure. So there may be something in that line near the TXV, and where we messed with it, it actually jarred it over and got it worse. I don't think the power head being changed made it worse. I think it's just either a bad valve internally, which does happen, but it's rare, or there's something up against that valve that's plugging it, maybe like a gauge solder or something. So we're gonna have to go in and cut that valve out. I've called, they do have one next town over. He said he thinks he has one. He's gonna go check and call me back, but if he does, I'm gonna get somebody to bring it to me, and I'm gonna get started cutting this thing out of here. Okay, they do have a TXV, so it's on its way over here now. I've got nitrogen going in the suction line outside. So what I'm going to do, since this is kind of holding it, I'm going to heat this up. There's not really enough room in here to cut anything without, having to do a lot of patching. So I'm going to warm this up, pull this line off, warm this up, pull the valve off, and then I'll pull this equalizer out last. I went ahead and took my new power head off. No point in getting it hot. I'm not even going to wrap a rag around this guy because it ain't going back on. If that valve is the wrong valve, I'll put a piston in it temporarily or something to get them going. Okay, while we wait on the new one to get here, let's see if we can get this in apart and see what's going on in there. Probably also going to need to blow that line out good and maybe put a dryer on it. And here's our unicorn, a part somebody actually had in stock during these times of no parts availability. And she fits, so it looks like the right part. Well, they had this guy crammed back in there. That's the piece. That actually is after it broke off inside after I pulled about an inch out. So it almost had to be at the back of this pipe. So I'm not going to stick this one in that far. We'll just make sure she's in there good where the solder won't close her up and call it good. So I'll get this brazed in. I've cut this loose right here. A, I was looking to see if there was anything in that line, which there was not. And B, I wanted to cut out this nasty looking joint. It's got a little dent there too. And then C, I'm going to put my new dryer in here, close to the TXV. Okay, she's brazed back in. I'm going to put that dryer in right here, and cut this piece out. But before I do, I'm going to go outside and cut out the old dryer and braze a piece back in. Because right now I'm sending air this way, so it's coming out here. But what I really want to do is make sure and blow this line out good after I cut out the old dryer and before I put the new one in. So we'll go outside and get that done. Okay, we cut out this old dryer and we've made us a little piece to extend that out. Got me a mulch shield here to keep from hopefully catching the plantings on fire, and we'll get it brazed in and then we'll jump down and put that dryer in. Okay, we got that brazed in, got that line blew out good. So we'll go down and put it together and we'll be ready to pressure test. I'm getting ready to lose my shade. I may just do that right quick and get us a pressure test on it so we can try to get this vacuum pulled and get out of here before it gets too hot. Okay, the dryer's in. You can see it's a biflow because that's all I keep on the truck. Most of our stuff around here is heat pumps. Of course, you can use this anywhere, but you can only use a one-way dryer on air conditioning only. If I'd have been a smart man, I'd have had them send me one when they sent the TXV, but that didn't happen today. And here's the piece we cut out for this dryer. That's why I put it where I did. It's kind of in a bad area right here, real close to that kink, but I wanted to get rid of that and that coupling there. So we killed two birds with one stone. Well, that beep means we passed our pressure test. So I don't even have valve cores in here now. I'm gonna put new ones in since I went this deep. So I'm just gonna pull these hoses off and let the nitrogen out and get started on this vacuum. Okay, she hadn't been on but a few minutes and it's pulling down pretty quick. My theory is they pull down faster with a new dryer than they do with an old dryer because the existing dryer was being, the vacuum is actually taking some stuff out of it. So since we have a brand new dryer, this actual evacuation should go quicker than the last one. Well, we got a good vacuum, so I just unscrewed my gauge. I'm gonna let it run for a few minutes because when you unscrew that gauge, it lets just a little bit in or reduces your vacuum. But I'm gonna get everything ready to go here and we're gonna try it one more time. Okay, the contactor just pulled in. Let's see if the second time is the charm or not. Well, that's looking a lot better. We'll let her eat here for a little bit, and I need to go downstairs. I didn't tape up the TXV bulb this time because I wasn't going to be cocky and have it bite me again. So I'll go do that and let this thing run a little bit, and we'll get a look at it again and see if it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Well, we got her insulated and got this insulation taped back down, so I guess we'll head back out of here with our bucket for the second time. Oh, and there's a water hose I was looking for. About 3 feet from where I've been standing. Ream wants a subcooling of 9 at this outdoor temperature according to the chart over here, so I'm going to grab the recovery jug and go ahead and take just a smidge out and try to bump that subcool down just a little bit. I just got the jug hooked to the manifold here so you can open up the high side. Take just a little out. This only works if you need a little bit, otherwise the jug gets as hot as everything else out here, and you'll have to get your recovery rig off the truck to do it. Okay, fellas, just turn the gauges back on. We're just a little bit below 9, but we're close enough. She's sweating good all the way back. I think I'll go ahead and take my gauges off. Put the caps on. Put the door on. And get out of here. This old girl ain't wanting to give up her secrets very easy. I need to take it somewhere and put it in a vise. I've tried, of course, a pipe wrench and adjustable wrenches, but she just won't budge. I'd like to get to look at the inside of her and see what she looks like. I got to thinking, you know, this is a 2014 unit. Remember the old rust inhibitor Copeland was using in 2014 that caused all these TXV problems? Surely it would have shown up before now, but being a AC only unit, probably hadn't had a lot of runtime. And I saw y'all looking at my big Amazon box, probably wondering what I got in that thing. Got this thing in it. I needed a heavy duty hitch for a 10,000 pound trailer, and nobody locally had one. So I ordered this. They shipped it next day in a box that big. It was laying right over against the cardboard in the corner with a bunch of those plastic balloons around it. So I'm not sure that was the best box to ship it in, but hey, it got here. And there you have it, folks. Is it always the powerhead when a TXV goes bad? Not always. Most of the time. Not this time. Thanks for watching.